Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, once again, President Zar of Obscurium, coming to you today with the second part of the Sancratosian Obscurian Cultural Exchange, or as I like to call it, the Big Flag Talk, featuring, once again, my lovely friend.
Yes, Chloe the Sancratosia, the sovereign princess of Sancratosia.
Welcome back again, and I'm really looking forward to talking about flags with you today. As you know, flags are my specialty. I'm a black man after all, but you're quite a vexillologist yourself, aren't you?
Yes, I mean, flag is. I've been someone who studied in political science and someone who is really fond of design. I think vexillology is a way to combine both of these passions, and it's a really good way to mix them together and talk about the political symbols within them and what it means to have flags and especially good or bad flags.
Excellent. So, we have four different segments for this talk, and the first one is something very current: modern flag design. Some people say it's gone too far, but has it really? And how do micronational flags relate to this whole issue? So obviously, why I say it's current, it's because there have been two flag changes just recently. For one, the U.S. state of Minnesota has decided to get a new flag, and Kyrgyzstan also changed their flag ever so slightly. So, Chloe, what do you make of all this?
Well, in one of these two cases, I say that it was not a good idea, and in the other of these two cases, I say it was a good idea. So changing a flag just because you don't like the way people portray it, or just because you don't like the symbols that people associate with your flag, which is, of course, you may want your flag to have certain symbols or certain ideas, but I think that if people as relate genuinely to your flag in ways that you don't control, that it's okay. It's the purpose of a flag also is that people can appropriate it and be proud to display it. And so changing your flag for the sole purpose that you, for instance, in Kyrgyzstan, that people associate that with a sunflower, where in your mind it's the sun. I mean, that is a really bad example of flag change, and especially because and usually it's a bad idea when it's politically charged, when it's not just redesigning because we really want to improve or our ideas change, our government style change or something like that, but when it's really done because the political party associates with the sun and does not associate with the sunflowers and stuff like that, that is I think a really bad argument to start a flag redesign. But when you talk about a place like Minnesota, where the previous flag was actually something people did not relate to and did not, they didn't use it anywhere. You could not find it in any stores. You could not, you would barely find it at sporting events. Then yes, it's a good idea to think about what your flag is and how can we make that a symbol of our state, and how can we get people to identify to the state even more by creating something that they can be proud of. That is, I think, where redesigns are good, and especially in places like US states where most places you cannot really relate to them because the flag is either too similar to other states, and even if it was similar, but it's just bland. So I get why people don't fly their state's flag.
Yeah.
And coming from Canada, I know why most people would have a provincial flag and of course a Canadian flag at home, because well they are greatly designed. Most of them,
Most of them.
not all of them, most of them.
No. But you summed up the whole issue perfectly. And what I also have to say about your state flags is there are some people who seeing the Minnesota now. That's also a thing with the Minnesota flag. While the change was good, I think we are all a bit disappointed with the result, especially since they chose a flag and then basically created a completely new flag and said, "Oh well, but you designed it," when in fact they designed it, not the people, which I have an issue with. But it's still a major improvement on the old flag. But there are some people who have used this flag to say, well, it's just a very modern and very bland flag. So U.S. state flag redesigns was actually a big a big um, a step into the wrong direction, because they're all just bland fields and geometric shapes with stars on them. And yes, that is true in some cases. If you look at the flag of Cedar Rapids, I believe, for example, doesn't it just looks very generic, but it just goes into a deeper problem with US symbolism in general, because a lot of the places in the US they don't have much else except for mountains and rivers and lakes and forests and stars. So you and I think the issue here is, instead of doing something completely new and radical and making up stuff, they just go back to generic symbolism. But still, if you compare it to what's been floating around before it, the seal on bedsheet flags and all that, they are still major improvements. I'd rather have a bland, modern-looking flag than a goddamn monstrosity in my room, if I were from one of those states. And another argument is to not get rid of those flags because they are historic. They have been in use for 100 years or longer. And the history of the seal as a U.S. symbol is also very historic and goes back to England and such. My response to that would be, just because a symbol has been in use for a long time doesn't mean you have to keep using it if it's absolutely terrible. And in case of U.S. seals, it's not just a case of uh, the, the seals being the unique seals being very terrible. Well, there are some good seals, but there are some seals who are unique, but well, different from other U.S. seals, that is, but still terrible. But a lot of the U.S. seals are also similar to each other and terrible at the same time, because a lot of them basically just contain a farmer plowing his field, and then some railway or industrial site in the background, a lake, maybe a steamship and a sunrise, and then some motto like industry, agriculture, progress, and things like that. Put some if you put some a wreath of some wheat around it, it would almost look like the emblem of a socialist republic in some cases. And I get that the seals looked like that
Yeah.
because they were made in a time when the time of manifest destiny, right? America was expanding, and the states were all brand new, right? They didn't have any other symbols except for what was literally happening at that point. Steamships, steam trains, and farmers plowing fields, and then sometimes a Native American riding off the seal into obscurity, just as it was the case on Minnesota's old seal and flag. But yeah, it represented the states as they were back then, but those states have had a history since then. It's been over 100 years, so maybe it is time to change. I mean, I'm not even saying that I can't keep those symbols, but maybe I should make them a bit more distinct, and just do something else with it to differentiate themselves from our states. Because when I put a couple of those seals next to each other, which I may do in the editing of this video for you to see here, if there were no words on the seals and I wouldn't tell you which states these seals belong to, you probably wouldn't be able to tell me which seals these states belong to. But if I show you the seal of, let's say, Maryland, for example, you'll immediately know it's Maryland because they have a coat of arms in there with very specific design. Or if I show you New Mexico, for example, I'm not a big fan of the New Mexico seal. At least you can tell. Well, because you have the Mexican eagle in it. Oh yeah, that's New Mexico. Those seals, they have at least something that sets them apart from other U.S. seals. And even with New York, I mean, it's also a bit on the blander side, but still, when you look at it, you do get a feeling of New York being the Empire State with the globe and
Yeah.
everything. At least they set themselves apart a bit.
But still,
Yeah.
it's yeah, still for New York, they could do something much better. And yeah, you touch on two important things. Well, on the historical side of things, I would quote Indiana Jones on that. Its place is in a museum, so you should put all these
It
flags in a
belongs
museum.
in a museum.
It belongs in a museum, and so that's where these flags should go. And because you change your flag does not mean you are denying that your history existed or
Yeah.
that this was your flag previously. You're not doing that. It's a different thing in micronations. We'll get to that, but in
Hmm.
usually in, you know, other places, when you change your flag, it's because you evolve, it's because you change, and it's okay to change.
Yeah.
If your nation would remain the same as it was in the uh, well, for the US 1700s or
Oh
1800s,
God, no.
it would be a bad thing. So to change your flag is actually, it's not a denial of your history, and actually it's a good way to, as you say, either incorporate new history or reaffirm some elements of that history if that's something that you want, like Utah did with their redesign. They reaffirmed the beehive as a symbol of their
Mwah.
nation, and they really enshrined it in a symbol that was representative. It's actually more representative of Utah than the previous one was.
Absolutely.
And so you can do actually good design. In the case of Minnesota, it's actually the problem is more the design by committee. It can give up good things, like in Canada. Our flag was a flag that was mostly designed by committee. Could have been much worse if you look actually at some of the proposals that
Oh
were
yes.
studied, but still, usually it gives up bad ideas or bad designs when you design by committee. In democracies and in especially in representative democracies, how can you prevent that from happening? I don't know if there's any solution out there, but surely I think Minnesota's redesign, the disappointment is not because it's mostly because of the design by committee. So I think we should, going forward, try to find ways where at one point we need to stop having so many redesigns throughout the process,
Hmm.
and, you know, just,
Yeah.
stick to one idea and go forward
I,
with
I
it,
I think
even if it brushes a couple feathers. There are no perfect designs.
I think that the easy solution in this case, there actually would have been an easy solution because if the committee had stopped at the point where they selected the quote unquote finalist, then
Yeah.
well, everybody wouldn't have been happy, of course. But I think most people would have been perfectly happy with that flag. But
Oh
then
yeah.
the problem was the committee went further and started to change that flag. So
Yeah.
if from the beginning the ground rule would have said you choose a flag that was submitted from the people and then you leave it like that, you don't
Hmm.
change it further. I think that was the major misstep in Minnesota's case because that kind
Exactly.
of doomed the finalist flag. But still,
I imagine we would have had similar results if Mississippi and Utah decided to go the same way with Minnesota. These designs are the ones that were voted by the population, and they stayed that way after being voted
yeah.
by the
Well, you can also
population.
see that same problem in Mississippi's flag because while the committee didn't change the flag after the fact, they actually changed the flag before the fact because they mandated
Oh
that
yeah,
the
yeah,
words "In God We Trust" be put on a flag, which is in my opinion quite silly for two reasons. One, you don't put letters on the flag. That's just a no-go thing. I mean, there are these rules, good flag,
yeah,
bad flag,
yeah.
and like usually I'd say stick to those rules, but you can bend them, you can even break them. But there's one rule you cannot touch, and that's put lettering on the flag. That's just something you do not do. And on the other
Totally
hand, I
agree.
don't get. I thought there was supposed to be the U.S. was supposed to be a secular state where religion and state are
Uh,
separated, and then you put a clearly religious quote on your state flag. In my opinion, that doesn't make any sense. But I mean, that's for the Americans to figure out.
and I mean, what's really funny is that the U.S. is says that it's such a secular state, but of course you will find the phrase "In God We Trust"
Yeah.
everywhere. Whereas Canada is actually a theocracy because the power is vested in the Queen, or now the King, who is vested by God to be the king of Canada. And but actually, we are a secular state. You won't find God anywhere
You won't find God in Canada,
in
people.
Canadian. you will not find God except where we recognize the primacy of God and the king in Canada in our constitution, and that's the funny reverse way of the two countries. You have one that is technically on paper secular state where there's a clear separation between state and religion, but on the field it's really more blurry. Whereas in Canada, it's clear in our constitution the supremacy of God is, that's where Canada takes its power from God and the king, and that's really clearly defined.
Mm.
But you won't find it anywhere in Canadian society. Traces of God and the separation of church and the state here is pretty more adamant. And so, yeah, it's just a funny side note on Canada and US being different on that matter.
No, no, that is quite an interesting side note to consider here. Of course, besides the US state flags, we already touched on Kyrgyzstan in the beginning, but there have
Mhm.
been some similar flag changes as well. Could you briefly highlight those?
Yes, I looked at the timeline of national flags, and I kind of saw a trend that in the beginning of 2010 there were a couple of flag redesigns that, for most cases, gave up. It's mostly color changes or color reaffirmation. Sometimes the government will, consider that it was not the proper red that was printed in most places, and so they codify the proper color to be designed. But one such example of a flag redesign that I think that people should have stuck with is Malawi. In 2010 changed their flag to have the sun not red on the top but white in the
Mm.
center, and that lasted for 2 years before it was changed. And That would have been actually a good redesign. There's Mauritania, who in 2017 added the red bands. I think it makes more sense than
Mm.
the previous green field with their symbol. And Montenegro changed their flag in 2004, a couple of them like that. Myanmar, we decided to go forward with a non-British flag in 2010.
Mm.
So there were a couple of great ideas during these years. Paraguay, I much prefer. Well, I mean, it's a coat of arms on the flag, but I prefer the coat of
That
arms
is
that
not
they
the
have
only
since
problem of Paraguay's
2013.
flag.
No, exactly. It's not the worst, and some like Serbia are clearer since 2010, and so yeah, there were a good movement in the 2010s where countries were just looking back at their flags and making small changes, small improvements, or for some, in the case of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 2006, to revert back to one of their previous flag, but with the lighter blue that they had chosen at the beginning of the 2000. That was also, I think, a good choice because I really like
Yeah,
the DRC flag. So that was a great movement where I think people sometimes should like we I know some countries have in their constitution um, provisions where they need to review the constitution every 5, 10, 15 years because society change, and it's okay to acknowledge that changes have happened there and to update your country because you don't want it to be stuck in the past. And I think
no,
we should do
no.
that with flags sometimes, at least to maybe not change it, but at least have a talk and have a discussion on, is this the symbol that still represents us, and is it still applied, especially in countries, and we had this I have this hypothesis for Malawi that is probably the ruling party who changed the flag in 2010, and then there were an election and the
Mm.
opposition party came back and rechanged the flag. And so that's one of the thing I really don't like in some of the flag designs, is when you make it too much a symbol of your political party.
Yeah, but
I know flags are politically charged. It's
yeah, but
always
that,
going to be
that
that
that's
way.
mostly a problem with countries that are newer. Like
Yeah. Well, exactly.
most African countries got their independence in the 1960s, so that hasn't. What? How long has it been? 60, 70 years since then.
Yeah.
So that's not too long. Compare it to most European flags, which have been around since the 1840s and such,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
even older. So those are just. We've gotten used to the flags here, and there's no
No,
debate
definitely.
about changing the German flag, despite the fact it's a bit bland, of course. But you
Yeah.
know. There are no such debates here, but in other countries, the flags are newer, and they are also, as Chloe said, politically charged sometimes,
Yeah.
because they got the independence, and this one party was very important to that independence. So the first party also got to choose the flag, and what
Yeah.
better way to advertise your party and its role in the independence of your country than putting its symbols on your flag. I
And
mean,
in some
actually,
cases,
South
like
Africa is a good example on how that was done right, because they didn't really put any
yeah.
specific symbols, and they didn't make the whole flag about the party. I mean, if they
Hmm.
had used the ANC tricolor as the flag of South Africa,
Oh,
that would have been
definitely.
a very bad move. But they actually incorporated a Dutch flag into it with the ANC colors, and it made for a very unique and creative, and I think beloved flag even.
Yeah. If you compare that to the flag of Angola, where they just took the flag that the political party used when they were
Mm.
fighting the Portuguese, and then they said, well, we already have a political party flag, let's make it the national flag. That is another good example of a political party putting their
No,
colors
no.
into the national flag.
Although
So the
I have to say here, Angola's flag still looks awesome.
it's really awesome. I totally agree with you. It's a flag I wouldn't redesign soon, but I would still wish that people would have a say in the redesign of a
Obviously,
flag like
it
this.
is heavily politically charged, and if you are an Angolan and you really don't like communism, you might. I mean, I don't know any Angolans, but they probably will have a problem with the flag.
Oh
I
yeah,
would
yeah,
reckon.
surely, surely.
And
So
that's always that's the main point. If you put very political symbols on your flag that only allude to a specific section of your of a to a politic to a specific party of the in your country and such, so that they will. I mean, you can please everyone with the flag, but more people will be unhappy in that case. And if you do that instead of selecting a
mhm,
more neutral symbol that represents the whole country,
yeah.
it's like if you took the car if you took the flag of the if you took the symbol of the Tories in the UK and made that the national flag, because the Tories were the first party to bring democracy to the UK. Obviously, that's not what happened, but just
Hmm.
theoretically, if they had done that, and obviously all the people who vote Labour and whatnot, they would
Yeah.
nowadays be very unhappy. Uh,
But
well,
but
just
some
because the Tories made our country's democracy doesn't mean they get to have the flag for the rest of our country's history.
but some places have done this, and if the flag is really really good, then sometimes it can lose the meaning.
Mm,
We
that's
will
also
talk
true.
about it, but Quebec's flag, the blue is officially representing conservatism, which was then the ideology of the party who presented the flag. And but nowadays most people won't say that it represents conservatism more than it represents blue for French, or French language and stuff like that. So because it's a beautiful design, even
Yeah,
if the blue originally represents a political idea, I think that because it's such a great design, you can get past the fact that that color represents an ideology, and you can adopt it as your own because it's such a strong symbolism for the rest of the flag. And I think Angola, I don't think people would want to redesign the red and the black. It's just quite classical. Maybe the symbol in the center. If
yeah,
I see
that
Angola's
would be an
flag
idea.
moving forward, it's just the symbolism in the middle, and probably not the red and black bands, because they're now, I think, really established as being Angola. And
Mm.
because that's the thing, at one point your flag symbols go so far, and they kind of represent everyone at the end. And yes, some flags also could benefit from a redesign, because you mentioned good flag, bad flag. And some people who are watching may know that CGP Grey is also a really interesting an amateur vexillologist, like we all are. And one more he said that one more guideline should be added to the guide, and that one was really interesting. Is, can your flag be painted on your face for sporting events? And that was actually that made me think that by that guideline, which I completely adore. And
Mm.
talking about Minnesota's flag redesign, who now falls into that category, whereas where it was a seal on a blue background did not fall into
I'm
that
actually going
category.
to give you one great example of that rule in action. So when I was in what was that, high school, the German equivalent of high school. At least we don't call it high school here. But so we had this. It was 2016, and there was the European Football Championship happening. So we decided to not reenact it, but basically we assigned every class a team, and then they had to play against each other. And so we had our own little European championship. And so we were assigned Slovakia. And if you know Slovakia's flag, you will know that it's basically the Russian flag with the Slovak coat of arms on it. Now, it's not, they didn't choose the flag because it was the Russian flag. It had a completely independent history, but that's still what it is. It's still a Russian flag, basically. So the thing was, one morning I bought some Slovak flags and I went to school with them. I had one on my bicycle, actually, and there were people who asked me in my town, why are you flying a Russian flag? Because they knew the Russian flag, but they'd never
Yeah.
heard of the Slovak flag. And then we actually painted the flag on our faces as well. But many people just painted a little flag on their faces because, it takes a long time to paint the flag on your entire
Hmm.
face, and we don't have all day to do that. So just painting the
Hmm.
stripes on your face, that's good. But you know when you paint the flag on here, and how you supposed to do the small coat of arms. So what you ended up with
It's
was just having the three
impossible. Yeah.
stripes. So again, we actually looked like we were fans of the Russian team instead of
Yeah.
Slovakia. So that's very unfortunate for Slovakia that they have a flag that looks like the flag of two other countries, actually, because there's also Slovenia, and Slovenia is even
Exactly.
more
Yeah.
unfortunate because their coat of arms isn't even big and prominent.
Hmm.
As soon as that flag wraps around the flagpole a couple of times, you have the Russian flag. Actually,
Exactly.
I saw that. I saw the Slovak embassy in Copenhagen when I went there this summer, but I thought it was the Russian embassy because just that thing had happened. So
Yeah.
it's very unfortunate if you have
And
a flag like that, and very
yeah.
problematic too in cases
And
like that.
at least that gives and I mean I don't think it should be like an official guideline, but an unofficial guideline where
Hmm.
whereas it gives you some ideas on okay, and maybe then Slovakia should probably think about its flag one day, because we know there are symbolism that are quite different, but maybe the coat of arms could be more prominent or something like that. Maybe it makes you
Yeah.
think again about that. And I was just thinking, when CGP Grey gave that idea, I was like, imagine a matchup between, two U.S. states where people paint the flags.
No.
You wouldn't be able to
Oh
recognize them
no,
in the
no, you
crowd.
would
And
not.
even if people had the big flags, on poles in the stadium,
Yeah, you're
you
still that.
wouldn't be able to recognize a fan of your state from a fan of another state.
I mean, with
That
US
would be
state flags,
impossible.
it's that bad that some of them even have the name of the state written
Yeah,
on them. It's
exactly.
that
Because
bad.
you cannot discern this state from another state.
Yeah,
So it should be an unofficial guideline. Whereas if you
absolutely.
think you have a really good design, then think about that. Is it possible to paint it? Because I think that is the ultimate form of flag appropriation, where people start to paint the flag on their own face. That is when you achieve, I think, peak flag design. And
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
it's also why also how you can see that some parts of your flags are good and some are not, because I'm pretty sure that in Australia, when you paint your face, you're not painting the Union Jack, you just paint the blue, and then you paint probably the Commonwealth Star, maybe the Southern Cross on the other side, but you forgo completely the
It's
United
yeah,
the Union Jack. And so I think that's where you have your redesign for Australia. You just get rid of the Union Jack, maybe put the Commonwealth Star in the middle, or maybe keep it as it is, or make that Commonwealth Star a bit bigger or something. But at least if you look at how people appropriate your flag, then it gives you an idea on how to maybe redesign it in the
hmm,
future. And if they don't appropriate your flag, then it's time to do like these US states and think about something completely new
yeah,
and something
exactly.
that is completely genuinely your state.
Exactly. Well, the other most important thing is not only to try to follow that rule. Can you actually paint it on your face, or what's actually in good flag bad flag? Can a child paint? Can a child draw
Oh
it from
yeah,
memory?
yeah.
That also goes in that direction. But what's also extremely important is it distinct? Is it an original design? Even if you're going for a theme like the Scandinavian flags,
Oh
does it
yeah.
still hold up? And that's what the Scandinavian flags do so well. I mean, if you look at that's also another embassy experience. I was in Berlin and the sun was setting. I was looking. It was hadn't set completely. It was just starting to get dark, and I was looking down the road, and I saw the Hungarian embassy, and I didn't know if it was the Dutch embassy or the Hungarian embassy, because both flags have a red stripe, a white stripe, and then a stripe of a dark color. But I
Yeah,
couldn't see if it was green or if it was blue, so it could have been either of them. And I didn't know in
exactly.
that situation. Of course, it's not like, oh, I was trying to blow up the Hungarian embassy, and I was in a horrible dilemma at that point. It was just a me problem, but
Yeah.
that's the whole point of flags nowadays. They're not to be essential symbols to differentiate your country's armies and navies in times of war, to be these symbols to
Hmm.
decorate your buildings with, to inspire national pride, to decorate your faces with. And
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say that Hungary and the Netherlands have to redesign their flags, especially since the Dutch have been using that flag for a very long time. I don't want to say they came up with the idea of a tricolor, but they're
I think
definitely one of
they
the
did.
first
I
to
think
use it.
they're one of the first, and
Yeah.
although I prefer the one with the orange and not the red, but that's just me. And what you mentioned is good. Yeah, so there are some of the guidelines, and of course, be distinctive or related is a really good rule. Either you, if you go, and especially for micronations, if you go with the Scandinavian, if you go with Scandinavian ideas, sure, go for a Scandinavian cross
Yeah,
in your
but
colors. And
if I may intersect real quick, but that's what I was going for. The Scandinavian flags are better because you might think, oh well, Swedish and Danish flags, basically they are both a cross
Mhm.
on a bright cross on a dark field, but the colors and the proportions are so drastically different that even
Yeah,
when the light is a bit dim, you can still differentiate them from each
exactly.
other.
Yeah,
So
and
that's where they succeed.
and what you mentioned with the colors and everything, that's one thing that I think not a lot of people do when they design flags, whether for micronations or even for national flags. Is have you looked at the flag in grayscale? Because a lot of times people won't be able, especially on documentation, people won't print your documents in color. They will print your documents in grayscale. And then, is it good with people with high problems?
Yeah.
And usually in some softwares, like I know with Adobe Illustrator, you can do that. You can see with different types of high problems what your flag looks like,
Mhm.
and you can actually see if you have enough contrast in your flag, because a lot of people choose two shades of different colors, but when with certain types of eye coloration problems, they become the same tint, and
Yeah.
people just see a big band and then there's just a small band. And I really encourage people when they design, or even myself when I design for other people, to do that test, because it's really important, especially for these people who will see your flag and they may not relate to it because they think it's bland, but your flag is not bland. It has vibrant colors because you see the colors correctly and they don't. And I think you
Yeah.
should take into account that these people may want to be a part of your micronation,
Mm.
and of course you need to design a flag that corresponds to that as well.
I'll also add here that that's why I am personally not really. I mean, a lot of macro and micronations have these very specific tones of shades of colors they want to use on the flag, and that's fine. If you want to set that out specifically, it's fine. But I never did that for the Obscurian flag because it's my conviction that it's in the end. I mean, when a child draws it, for example, they're not going to be able to use those specific shades of color. They only have that many colored pencils at home. So,
Exactly.
and it goes even further than that. I once saw a poster for the European Community, the predecessor of the European
Yeah.
Union, and they chose the same shade of they basically all the blues were the same shades and all
Hmm.
the greens were the same shades. So as a result, the flag of Luxembourg and the Netherlands looked exactly the same, and that is why some people say, "Yeah, but it's a different flag." They also say that about the flag of Chad and Romania. It's the different flag, a different shade of blue. Yeah, but they may have it on a photograph or on a poster, and it's what you talked about, and the shade may change slightly, and boom, it's the same shade all of a sudden.
Hmm.
And in
Especially
the
with the
natural
old printing. Yeah.
in the store where I work at, there is a product which is from Italy. I think at least it's from Italy because they have the little flag on it, but it's always kind of a bit hidden away, and the colors are very dark. They're printed very dark, and I can never I can tell one of them is red. One of the stripes is red, but I still don't know if the other stripe is green or a dark blue. Because so and then that my whole argument with that is just don't use tricolors anymore. At least
Yeah.
don't use tricolors without putting a different symbol. And if someone else has used a tricolor, don't even use it when even if you put a different symbol in it. Just try to come up with other stripes or shapes
Yeah.
or designs of flag. There are so many options. The sky's the limit.
Oh,
You can
totally.
even be a bit more complicated. You don't have to necessarily be have create a flag that a child can draw from memory. But just don't make it too simple.
Hmm.
Try but trying to appease that rule, because that then you're going to sacrifice originality, and in the end that is a bit more important in my opinion, at least. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and what you say is especially true, and with older types of or professional types of printing, where you would have a set number of inks
Hmm.
that you could use for printing, and then like in old atlases, it's a problem
Yeah.
because sometimes certain inks are, uh, at least for Luxembourg, they would usually use the same tint as the waters in the ocean, and of course the blue of the Dutch flag would have been a darker blue, so they would, at least for most, probably not for your the poster that you have, but in the worst case scenario, it's I'm pretty sure that the Dutch flag and the Luxembourg's flag, they can mix up when it's grayscale. You probably don't recognize them, and France and
Yeah.
Italy, you don't recognize them in
No,
grayscale.
not
You
either.
cannot differentiate them, and so that's one thing to consider, because if you go with the tricolor, if you print it in grayscale, it's gonna look at like so many of the other tricolors
Yeah.
that you find, unless
Mhm.
you really do something that, I don't know, is really really out there. But on grayscale, it's gonna look like any other
Yeah, I mean, for
tricolor.
example, the very easy thing is you can have a tricolor, but you can make the edges between the lines wavy or pointy or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's already something that in grayscale
Yeah.
you're gonna see. Oh, you know that's these little points and edges.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
a different flag. And the thing is, yes, you know, we're criticizing the flags of Italy and France, and we both know they're never going to change their flags. These flags have hundreds of years of history. But Luxembourg, on the other hand, for
Oh
example,
yeah. Yeah.
even like I went to the European Parliament in Brussels, and even in the shop, they don't sell the actual flag of Luxembourg. They sell the civil ensign, because
Oh
even
yeah.
they
Yeah.
realize it's utterly silly of them to still be using that tricolor. So Luxembourg definitely changed their flags. And I mean, this is of
Yeah.
course also a video primarily made for micronationalists, also for micronationalists who may be redesigning their flags or making new flags. And you know, if you're making a new flag, obviously don't be Italy and France. Don't be Luxembourg, especially. Don't
And
make
the
the
thing,
same mistakes.
Luxembourg just have to reverse the flags, because okay,
Yeah.
they can, if they want to use the red, white, and light blue, go for it. But at least officially, just reverse them. And even on their roundels, it's the light blue stripe with the
Exactly.
red lion. Everywhere they use the red lion flag, and that, and at least they have a really good alternative. It's already out there,
Yeah.
it's already accepted by the people, it's
People are
already
using
accepted
it.
by the
Other countries
government,
are
and
using it.
yeah. So
So why aren't
Luxembourg is
you?
a no-brainer. France, I would love them to go back to the blue field with gold fleur de lis, but
That would
that's
actually be
just
quite
me.
lovely, yes. But you know, we all know what happens when the French try to go back
Yeah,
to a different
it's
political
it's
phase.
just historically charged, this one.
We don't want another French Revolution, so
No,
so
exactly, exactly.
um, since I mentioned micronations, that would also be the second part of
Hmm.
this question. So
Yeah.
how does this all relate to micronations? Because micronations, of course, are a whole other thing. There aren't many micronations that have had a history going back hundreds of years. Well, I think no micronation today. I think most micronations that are 100 year long history or have become macronations at this point. But there are
Totally.
there are some micronations who have been around for 40 years and such, but most micronations have been around for a decade or two at
Hmm.
least. So,
Yeah.
what to do those micronations do if they have a flag they don't like, especially a flag they don't like anymore, especially a flag they see and they think, I'm not happy with that anymore. But they've been using it for a long time already. It's part of their history, and they have to spend money on changing it. So what's the solution to that problem? What do they do?
Well, in the case of micronations, it's interesting because, of course, a country like France changing their flag, it's more, it's more complicated because it's not just changing the flag because you want to change the flag because you're not happy with it, but people have really adopted the use of the French flag, and other countries recognize easily French, and not just the other countries, but the people inside those countries recognize that this is French flag. But for micronations, starting from the fact that it's usually at least started by some people that have interest in creating their own micronations, that it's still something that people do as a hobby. I don't know that many micronationalists who have been able to quit their day job and do micronations full time. So until then, it's still pretty much something that you do part time, and anything that you do that is not that is not fully encompassing the entirety of your life, you should at least be happy with it. And of course, if your flag is not bringing you happiness anymore, you should change it. And depending on how old your micronation is and how much you've invested in it, I still think you should change. The only things that would be to take into consideration is how much involvement do you have from your citizens and stuff like that in the redesign. Be sure not to fall into the redesign by committee pitfall, because I don't think it's just for U.S. states flags. It can be for micronations as well, that redesigned by committee. But of course, if that's something that is not bringing joy, you should totally change it. And in other cases, you may be prompted to change your flag because of other factors. Because at the time when you designed your flag, it had certain symbols, and now these symbols are associated with something else, sometimes in the real world, sometimes in the micronational world, and you may be prompted to change your flag and say, okay, yeah, let's say for instance that the micronation has taken the colors of the Gabonese flag, and that micronation has been on a rampage, and has been associated so badly with something, and your flag as is a tricolor of the Gabonese colors, but in a different order. You would want to change your flag because people would associate maybe your micronation with that micronation, and you'd say, okay, well, back when I started my micronation, that was good. These colors were perfect. But nowadays, everybody thinks I'm this other micronation who's been doing bad things. So yes, you could be prompted to change your flag, and even if you have printed 50 flags at home, it's sad, but I think it's sometimes the risk that you have going into a hobby like micronationalism, that you're not shielded from political events within micronational community or abroad as well.
Mm. Of course, of course. I mean, Obscurium. We touched in the last video on the United
Hmm.
People's Republic of Mars. Obviously, changing that flag was a no-brainer. Back then, there were only two printed flags. But even after that, we still we had basically the same flag we do right now. The difference
Hmm.
was the all that everything that's white was red back then, and then we weren't happy with that flag. There was no
Hmm.
contrast to it.
Yeah.
Design was good, but the contrast was just lacking. So we decided to
Hmm.
invest a bit of money and change it, and now we are happy with the flag. We recently
Yeah.
make a big flag made a big flag order, and uh, we have a lot of Obscurian citizens have this flag now, and we are quite pleased
Hmm.
with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not perfect by by any means, but we are happy with it. And at this point, well, we are better. We are in a better status because we decided to change that flag and get this new symbol.
Yeah. And
Um,
at least you acknowledge that you had a flag previously. I think one of the problems in the micronational community is that people change flags every 2 or so day, or maybe even
oh
every
yes.
month, and they don't acknowledge that they had the previous flags. And I think that's a problem because you wouldn't see Finland changing their flags and saying, "Oh well, the old one never existed. It's never been that. Please change your all the documents you have about this, change it for this new flag. I mean, everyone would look at Finland and say, "Have you gone mad?" Of course, Finland has a richer history than these new micronations, but if you at least own that you're changing your flags and that you are doing that for certain purposes, and yeah, I think it's not a bad idea to change flag. Of course, don't start changing flags every month, although I would be interested to see a micronation in which it's constitutionally required to change flag every month. That would be interesting.
But
But
it's a difference
apart
between
from, but this is but
it's a
this is
difference between having the having this concept of doing these flag change every month or
exactly,
every year, and just saying every month, nah,
exactly, yeah,
I'm going to change, and then it's this uncertainty. What are they going to do next? And
and
then nobody's going to want to work with you anymore because you can't be related. But
exactly.
it's usually, it's not just flag changes, more often than not.
Oh
It's
yeah,
also
yeah,
name and country changes
exactly,
and stuff. And then again, it's, it's okay to change the name of your country and the whole structure, even if you are unhappy with it. But don't do it
exactly.
every week or month.
Oh
That's
yeah, yeah, and
sit down and think about it. Talk to your citizens and do a collaborative thing. And when you really feel like you've found something, then use it. But don't just change it on a whim, only to discover a couple of days later that no, that wasn't really a good idea after all.
yeah, and it segues in what we said in the previous exchange, that one of the trick that I use is you buy stuff and then you cannot commit. And
Mm,
if it's owned, if you own it, and if it's deliberate, I think that's what sets up a good flag redesign from a bad flag redesign, especially in micronations. Is that you have you committed to it, or is it just out of on a whim that you're doing it, or because you felt like this that day? And I think most people in micronationalism, unfortunately, they have a new idea and they put it forward already publicly and everything, but they never take a step back. And when we started Sancratosia, that was the first thing we decided to do was, okay, we've come up with a flag design, we close everything, we go back, we don't touch Sancratosia for 1 2 days, and then we come back, we look back at the flag, and are we still happy with it? And we weren't. And so I think a lot of micronations are not taking that step back, on so many big things, like the entire the entire identity of your nation. I think is something you need to take a step back. But of course, for other projects, most micronations should take a step back or two, when redesigning it. And but it's never too late to change, especially if that does not make you happy, for sure. And because if you're not happy with your project will suffer, that's for sure. You will not
absolutely.
have any more joy in it, and it will show. Your projects will go down in quality, and your projects won't be as grand, and you won't be as happy to work on projects, because every time you will see your flag and every time you will see the name of your nation, you will be kind of sad with it.
Actually, that's a good way to lead into the next segment, because why exactly you already touched on why is Flanders changing their flag? Not only because they are unhappy with it, that there's also another issue here. That issue being the far right symbols and how they are stealing our symbols. So if you could elaborate on that, in the context of the Flandrensian flag, especially.
Exactly, and that's the thing, in far right movements. And I've always not been great designers, if I say so, because they've always been stealing
They've not really been great
symbols.
at anything, really.
But usually they take symbols that are not theirs, and they reappropriate them, and they change them, and they don't really come up with genuine ideas. And so unfortunately it has some real life problems. And for Flangensis, part of it is a Flemish movement in the Netherlands, which is using the black dragon on the yellow field, which has
Lion,
been a
lion.
symbol. A lion, yeah, sorry, a black lion, on a yellow field, which has been a symbol for Flanders for a long time, but it's been now taken by some of these far right movements in the Netherlands who want, kind of splitting Belgium and a Belgium for Dutch people only and stuff like that. And not only that, but also the tricolor, which of course is the same tricolor as a lot of Arab countries, but it's also the same colors of the German the German Empire, and so these colors are also now being taken back by the far right movements in Germany. And so having the colors of the German Empire and the symbol that's been taken up by far right
Yeah.
movements in the Netherlands, Flanders is kind not in the Netherlands. I keep saying Netherlands, but it's all in Belgium. I mean, sorry for Flangensis. I know
The
my
southern part of
geography.
the Netherlands.
It's, yeah, the southern part of the Netherlands in Belgium. So because these symbols have now been associated in the real world,
Hmm.
if we can talk like that, but in politics, in the Belgian politics,
Niels
with
actually
far right. So
Niels actually touched on that at Microcon. He
yeah,
said we can't just walk across around Ypres with the Flandrensis flag because people would think it's some kind of far right rally going on. And
exactly,
the same thing would happen in Germany, not because of the lions, but because of the flags
exactly, yeah,
of the
the
colors.
tricolor, yeah,
Either they start thinking this is some kind of Arab thing going on, or which is more the second thing is more likely, and the second thing being they think, oh no, these are some kind of imperial citizens
exactly,
trying to propagate their far right ideologies here, and that's what Chloe already mentioned. In Germany, the imperial German tricolor has also been appropriated by far right people now because they can't use their beloved swastika, so they went to the next best
exactly,
thing. And but that's also a thing. The imperial war flag, and I don't mean the one of the swastika. I mean the pre
yeah, yeah, yeah,
1918 one. That has kind of been a far right flag ever since 1918, actually, because uh, right when the imperial government fell and the democratic government was established, there were of course Freikorps. You might have heard of them. Far right militias who tried to bring order back to the streets by killing left wing revolutionaries. They would use this flag, and they'd also paint swastikas on their on their helmets sometimes. And the imperial German tricolors also were associated with those movements in design. I mean, in fact, in 1933, I believe for 1 year it was even the co-flag of Germany. But
hmm
nowadays, of course, it's escalated because more and more people have started using this flag. And in Bremen, even that flag has now been made illegal, at least partially, in the public. So yeah, but it's a very problematic topic of the far right people stealing our symbols. But this is an example of a symbol that's already been associated with right wing stuff, just being more appropriated by these people. And we have other flags in Germany. I'm going to show this photo right now on the screen, which I really like because it shows it shows a German tricolor, imperial tricolor with Q and Donald Trump on it, because imperial citizens really love Donald Trump. And then we have the Flemish flag we talked about, the one that's used by
yeah,
independents and right wing people. And then we also have a Nordic cross flag containing the German colors, which was actually a flag that the conspirators around Stauffenberg wanted to use after they taken out Hitler's government. It was a
hmm
flag proposal for that new German government. So you'd think, well, this is a more of an anti-Hitler symbol, right? So the
definitely, definitely,
far-right people would never start using this flag. But I don't know why it happened. But for some reason, in the recent years, people, imperial citizens and far-right protesters, started using that flag. Maybe they see themselves as revolutionaries fighting against the unjust, tyrannical Nazi government in Germany, trying to take away their freedoms, which has not yet happened, to my knowledge. To no one's surprise, well, not to my surprise at least, but yeah, these people sometimes see themselves as revolutionaries, so that may be why
hmm
they use this flag. But even it's strange when the right far right people start using symbols that were originally supposed to be against them. And
yeah. That
it's
is one
Germany has
rare
not been the
example.
only place where
Oh no.
other and older symbols have been appropriated by the right wing, Chloe.
Oh yes, well, of course, one of the most famous examples is also in South Africa, where
Mm,
the old flag of Africa, South Africa was, for a while it was constitutionally on the same level with the new South African flag, but since 2019, it's completely forbidden to display that flag, as it has been taken by white supremacist groups in parades, and so except of course for the museums and the places of interest and everything. Usually there are exceptions for the journalistic and
of course.
historic purposes and stuff like that. But yeah, and of course you see that in places where there was a strong, far right movements already, or governments, like the apartheid in South Africa was clearly a right, far right government. You would have the same in Germany, but where it's sometimes more difficult to bear, in places like in Canada, where it's the old red ensign that is now being taken in the last few years by white supremacists and the far right movement, whereas it's never been, we never had a totalitarian government in Canada during those years, but and that because that symbol is associated with the time where Canada was whiter, if I can say that. And so people have started to take that symbol back, or at least they take that symbol for their far right movements, which is in Canada. It's actually really sad, because the opposition to that, to the far right movements taking the red ensign, is not generally coming from the population. I mean, Canadians probably don't even know today that we had a red ensign. But the opposition comes from the veterans who fought in World War I and World War II, who actually fought under that flag. And for them, it's really disrespectful when far right movements are taking a symbol that is totally not theirs to take, and associate that symbol. So and veterans are really saddened by the fact that the far right movements have taken that symbol as theirs, because when they display it now, sometimes at military parades or anything, they kind of have this. They are now afraid to hurt some people who have been targeted by the white
Mhm.
supremacist groups and stuff like that. Whereas they're just proud to have fought under that flag and proud of their sacrifice for Canada. And it's a problem that we see even in countries where Canada, you wouldn't think that there's a big white supremacist history or white supremacist group or parades coming into some countries like this. But it's a trend that we're seeing more and more, with the far right being, I think, more likely to be in public. I think there were years where they kind of stayed at home, or they tried to be more secret with their groupings, but now they've become more public. And of course, having a flag to rally their members around the symbol is something that they've been keen to do. And in places like Canada, where we never had an authoritarian government to have a symbol to be associated with, they have to take the next best thing for them, which is unfortunately a symbol which should have never been associated with far right in the first place.
Mm. Exactly, exactly. It is quite unfortunate. I mean, I believe, if I remember correctly, the reason why the Dutch flag was, back in the 1930s, the Dutch flag was officialized, what kind of shade it should have, was because far right people back then were using the old flag, the Prinsenvlag, the one with the
Yeah,
orange, which Chloe likes so much. Uh,
I'm not
they
a far right person. I'm a design person.
Mm. No, but the far right people were starting to use that flag, so they wanted to officially differentiate the flags because there was
Hmm.
no official law stating that the Dutch flag shouldn't be orange. If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm if I misremembered that, but it's
I think it's
I
a
guess
possibility. Yeah.
it's a problem many countries will have to deal with, which have all historic symbols. I mean, even goes as far as to runes. Obviously the Nazis or any far right movement for that matter did not invent runes.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
runes are far older, of course, but then the Nazis came along and ruined them. and even today, for example, the Walknut is controversial because far right groups have used it. But then again, the German Football Association, for example, they also have a Walknut in their logo, and they are certainly not a far right group, at least as far as I know. Um, so and that goes into, I wouldn't call it a solution as what to do about these things, but something we definitely should try to do about this is, one, if it's an emerging trend, if some far right people just now are starting to use a certain symbol, we should do anything in our power to make people aware of what they're doing and make people aware that symbol has nothing to do with them, and take that symbol away from them again before they can use it. And if they have been using it for a longer time, try to take that symbol away from them now, because we cannot let we cannot let, just as we cannot let far right people ruin our countries, we can't let them ruin our historic symbols and stuff like that. So we
Hmm.
need to take them away from them again, and
Yeah.
reclaim them for us, so to say.
And it's really hard. And sometimes you mentioned the the Nordic German flag being taken as a, and it does. And that's one of the things that they do. They also take symbols which, like in the US, they take the most of the "Don't Tread on Me" flags, the Gadsden flag.
Yeah.
And these flags were actually for creating a government in the United States, and not anti-government, and they
These
are
flags did not
so.
have anything to do with anti corona measures or
Exactly.
far
But
right groups and anything like that.
and in the US, it's become a symbol of, anti-government, whereas people who fought with that flag were actually for a government in the United in what is now the United States, but against the tyranny of the authoritarian regime of the British. And it's so wrong that, and I think it's a and the publicity of far right groups and the taking of designs that, or symbols that are even contradictory to their ideas. I think it stems also from a deeper problem of education, in history and knowledge in the public school systems, that in the entire world. I think that in the 1980s and the 1990s, there were a lot of disinvestments in education and other social services. But in education, I think it led to some people, don't not knowing anything about their history. I don't think a lot of people in Canada know about the Red Ensign history, um, and I'm pretty sure it's the same with a lot of other places in the world,
Yeah.
where so if you don't know the real symbolism of your history, then of course it's easy when far right movements are coming and trying to entice people to join them. They say, well, that's our symbol and that's our flag and that's the flag we rally with because we believe this and that, and now you associate that flag with the symbolism. And yeah, that's unfortunate that some countries have, dropped um the history symbolism of their history.
Yeah, I think it's the most crazy in Germany. I mean, of the countries I know of, because Germany just has so many flags historically too. Germany has
Hmm.
always been a federation. It's always been a federal state. Lots of single states. So lots of these
Hmm.
protesters, far right people, protesters, such, they not only use the imperial German flag, but they also use the countless different flags of the smaller principalities, duchies, grand duchy
Oh yeah.
kingdoms. So that and it leads to a problem today. If you see a person on the street, or if you see someone flying the flag of the Kingdom of Saxony, you don't know if they're just flying the old flag of Saxony or if they're a right wing crackpot.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's an issue like that in Germany, and it's yeah, it's quite disturbing.
Yeah. And yeah.
And even the upside down German flag is a right wing symbol nowadays, believe it or not.
Well, upside down flags have always been, I think, symbols of anti-government, even if it means that you're in
Mm.
distress. It's because at least of that
Yeah.
association, that the
The, the, the,
distress of
the
the
the funny
government
thing
and
about the
everything.
the whole upside down German flag, though, is it goes back into the issue of education, because there was this
Oh
thing
yeah.
in 1832 called the Hambach Festival, and it's basically where the German flag was invented. I mean, Wikipedia probably and some other articles about the German flag will point to the Lützow hunters, the Lützow regiments during the Napoleonic Wars, and the flag of the Wartburg Festival, which I believe was in 1819. And yeah, that's where the colors already appeared: black, red, and green, black, red, and gold. But the first time when those colors were used in the correct order too was at the Hambach Festival. And the thing is, there's this famous painting where people are showing walking up to the Hambach Castle with waving the German flag, but actually on that painting the flag is upside down. It's gold, red, and black. So people say, well, that's the original German flag, and the government has been lying to us all this time. The real German flag is just the fake, and this is where it gets interesting. How do we know? Because that painting is just recolorized. The original
Mm-hmm.
is doesn't have any color. So from the painting, we can actually tell which way the flag is supposed to be, which way the place flag is supposed to be around. And it's not like the painting is a photograph of the event. Even if the original painting had the upside down flag, it's not evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But what is evidence is the fact that we have the original flag from that festival.
Yeah.
And even then, people could say, well, you just turned it upside down in the museum to fool us all. But that flag has lettering on it. And
Yeah.
if the flag were supposed to be with gold on top, the lettering would be on its head. So
Exactly.
even when
Exactly.
there is evidence for this flag, people still
Mm-hmm.
say the government is trying to bamboozle us.
Yeah. And it's not just it's not just flags that have been retaken. I mean, I wouldn't if we talk a bit about micronations, um I wouldn't take it on a micronation who had a big flag with a Z in the center to want to redesign their flag today because of the association with Z and the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Mm,
So I mean, every so the right and the far right are really easily taking symbols which are not theirs into
yeah.
making them these terrible things.
And even
And
unintentionally in that case, I don't think when they started their invasion of Ukraine, the Russian government was like, this letter Z is going
exactly.
to be the new symbol of this war or something.
Exactly. No, and of course, if a micronation had a flag with a big Z in the
Yeah.
center, if I saw that today, I would be, what's
Mm,
happening there? I would question it, even if that flag was designed 10 years ago.
yeah.
I would still question the usage of that flag still today,
Of course.
especially considering how that symbol has now
Mm,
become associated with
of course.
support for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And so yeah, right and far right are really good at taking designs which are not theirs because they're I guess pretty terrible designers themselves, and
Yeah, and they're
they
very
cannot
terrible
have
people.
genuine yeah, and they cannot have genuine thought and genuine expression of
Yeah.
identity,
And
and just taking old symbols. And I'm really afraid that at one point, for instance, countries which who have I mean, I kind of dread the moment where a country would have to, like in Germany, you're talking about them starting to ban the use of the German Empire flag, and of course there'll probably be exceptions for
yes,
museums
yes,
and
of
stuff
course.
like that, but it's really difficult when and I dread when if Canada has to do that, that we would have to ban a real big chunk of our history,
Mm,
because for so many years the red ensign was associated with Canada. Canada's flag is really really modern by stand by
yeah, it's a
micronational standards.
it's a completely different history because
Oh yeah,
again it's
totally.
much more modern. And during World War II, of course, like it was the flag of the quote unquote good guys.
Exactly, totally.
Even during the imperial days, the German
Hmm.
flag, the modern German flag is actually older than the imperial flag. And even during
Hmm.
the imperial days, of course, the Social Democrats, they were not happy with that government. So
Yeah.
when the Weimar Republic came to be, in 1919, people, a lot of people gladly embraced
Mm-hmm.
the new old flag and got rid of the
Yeah,
imperial tricolor, except for the right wing people, of course.
exactly.
So it's not like people today are like, oh no, but we are losing this valuable
No, I
piece
know,
of our
but
flag history.
but
But
in
in
Canada,
Canada, it's a
I
different
have the
thing.
sense that it's more that, especially with the veterans who are really really sad about that, and I just dread the moment where Canada would have to make the choice to ban a part of its
Mm.
history, and yeah, and I guess it's the same with the United States if they have to ban the.
Oh, that would
I
be
mean,
terrible.
the U.S. are not that prone into banning stuff,
No.
except for left wing books. But um, that's just my editorial on that matter. But it would be sad even for the U.S. to ban the Gadsden flags and the "Don't Tread on Me" flags,
Mm.
because they are such intrinsically linked into the formation of their country. Because of course, yeah, the British administration was really really harsh on the revolutionaries back in the time, and so they fought hard for parliamentary representation and for having their own fate in their own hands and stuff like that. And we can agree with these ideals, and
Mhm.
having these symbols
Absolutely.
being outrightly banned by the government would be terrible for
Yeah.
U.S. history. And I think we have to be aware that this is happening not just in places where they had autocratic regimes in the past, and
Mm.
that these are the symbols that are being taken
Yeah.
back, but that in democracies, in places where we never had really autocratic governments, that this is happening, that people are taking symbols. And I think in France they are taking the old royal symbols and stuff like that, and
Mm.
so parts of our history that does not belong to them is being taken forcibly by these people to raise ideas that are totally horrendous, and we have to be aware that this is happening as we speak.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's in that regard, and also in that regard, when you said that you'd see the flag with a Z on it, for example, and you'd immediately, of course, think that it might be associated with with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What's always important, also, what any citizen can do is not immediately say you are a supporter of
Oh
Russia
yeah,
or you
sure.
are a Nazi because you're using that symbol. You evil person. You think. Try to look for
Definitely.
context, and even if you can't find any obvious context, like for example, if there's a sign next to the Z flag saying uh, uh, peace in Ukraine, give the territory to Russia or something like that, then it's obvious, of course, they are supporting that. But if there's no obvious sign there on whose side they are, just approach them, ask them
Oh yeah,
nicely,
sure.
even if even if even if it's a right wing person, talking to them doesn't make you an evil person. I've had conversations with right wing people before.
Mm-hmm.
They try to convince me of some pretty crazy conspiracy theories, but I've survived them. I got rid of them eventually again, and
Mm-hmm.
as long as you don't get into an argument with who, they'll probably not try to hurt you or something. But just
Yeah.
asking them on what the flag represents, it's not bad if you don't know. If you see like a big imperial citizen rally in Berlin, that's probably but you'll probably know when you see that. That's probably a sign to stay away. But if you see a flag like that, a flag with a Z on it, just approach the person and ask, hey, what's your flag supposed to mean? And if they tell you, then, oh yes, I love Vladimir Putin, he's a great man,
Yeah.
that's okay, thank you,
Exactly.
have a nice day. But if
And
they say, well, it's supposed to represent this and that, and then you can say, okay, well, I thought it was supposed to represent the Z maybe, and then you can get into a conversation on why they're still using it and stuff, and get to hear their side, but never judge immediately upon seeing. I mean, that's a general rule, I guess, but especially when it comes to flags, try to look for context. Not all
exactly.
historic flags are evil, or
And if you
being
see
used by evil
someone
people and stuff.
If you see someone with the Eye of Providence on their flag, you can go and talk to them. Obscurium, for instance, are
Yeah,
not Freemasons or are
we're
not
not Freemasons, no.
Illuminati. They can, they are actually good folks over at Obscurium. Even
Not
so,
that
even if
Freemasons are inherently bad either, but
no, no, no,
that just
exactly,
also seems to be something in the minds of people. Whenever they hear the word
exactly,
Freemason, they immediately think,
exactly,
"Oh no, that's bad." It's also but that goes into the whole topic of education again. I think in the
exactly.
end,
Yeah,
the
yes,
best thing to
exactly.
do is to properly educate our people before they can even get such silly ideas that the government is lying to us about the original Hambach flag, or that Freemasons are
Mm-hmm.
evil and trying to take over the world,
Exactly.
and that the Canadian Red Ensign is only used by white supremacists.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. Be curious about what's around you, and if you see something that you don't understand, you should go and ask and at least educate yourself. And if you still don't know, there are many more ways now to be educated about things, which is kind of paradoxal that we have so many people who don't know anything about their own history, whereas back then we didn't have any Wikipedia and. I remember a time where we didn't have any Wikipedia, and the library was the only place where you could get educated on topics that were not taught at school. But nowadays, with Wikipedia and Google, it's quite easy to go and be more informed about what's happening around you. And it's paradoxal that so many people don't know anything about
Hmm.
their own history, unfortunately.
It is. It is. Well, I think we've covered that whole topic in detail, so it's time to move on to the last part
Oh
of
yeah.
this video. We talked about good flags and a lot of bad flags and the bad use of flags, and so I really wanted to end this on a positive note by talking about what we like and what we love. The question to the both of us was, what are our favorite micronational flags and why? And Chloe, I'd like you to go first.
That was a I have about 20 or so windows open from the microflag archive because I wanted also to look into the symbolism, and I guess most of them are tricolors and stuff like that because they're so simple. But I mean, some are just well made, like Dictionary. I don't think I have seen these colors anywhere else except maybe some obscure states or
Well,
principalities or old things like that. But I just think that the colors work well. They're quite contrasted, and it works well if you put the coat of arms. It's quite distinct, and it's just colors that are standing out. The darkness of the black, the really vivid red, and the blue. I think they work quite well together. That's one of the tricolors that I found. But of course, there are so many others that I think are really good, like Molossia. And Molossia, it's for
mm,
the reasons that, of course, Molossia had to evolve in a period where, custom flag was not an option. Custom made flag was not an option, so they couldn't print them because it was not something that was big back then. And so the idea to just reverse a national flag was, I think, just brilliant. And a flag that not much people know about. Sierra Leone is not the country name a country, it's not the first one that comes in your mind. And to have taken that kind of obscure country, especially maybe in 1999, and to make that your national flag, that was brilliant on the part of Melissa. And it's a total improvement on Volstein. I don't think that Kevin regrets doing anything about Volstein, but I mean the imagery is not the best. Molossia's is definitely better. And to segue into what we said, if Molossia changed their flag, their identity, and everything, you can do it, and you can become as big as Molossia. I don't think it would work well now because they are so established as Molossia nowadays. It wouldn't work as well, but it could still work. I can see Molossia still changing a couple of things and surviving. And I guess yeah, on the tricolors, I guess I also love Slabovia. because they also do something quite different with the purple and the gray. But that's one such example where gray would be difficult to acquire for a child in markers. And so probably that the Slavovian flag would probably just be painted or represented by child with only the two purple bands and the white band in the center. So they lose a little bit points on that.
Here's actually a fun flag about the fact about the Slavovian flag. It's supposed to be flown upside down when in distress, as we touched about
Yeah,
earlier when we talked about the flags being flown upside down. And the thing is, Slavovians are always in distress, as I was told. So actually, Slavovian flag is always flown upside down. And
yeah,
as you can see on the microflag archive, of course, it's also correctly depicted upside down. Some people,
exactly,
unfortunately, do not depict it as upside down, which is terrible. But I
definitely.
depict it correctly, as you can see.
And other flags that if you go with simple colors, because I think sometimes the simplest flags are the best flags. It's really hard to
Hmm.
it's really hard to you know do something bad with simple colors, and flags like Athabasca, who just add one more color to a tricolor, a tricolor is a good way, I think, to achieve a simple design, especially when it's associated with colors. With each color having their own symbolism is quite good. And I think I had another example of a flag that was really simple. That yes, Carnia Rutinia. I mean, it works. It's simple, but it's and it represents each of their united kingdoms within the empire. I mean, it's just it's hard to beat. Alternating bands of red and white um, is difficult to beat. But if we look into more complicated designs in micronations, um, I think that Dracul's redesign perfect. Here's one micronation that had a well-established design, the Welsh dragon, but golden on a tricolor of white, red, and blue, and they decided to uh, change and refocus more on the on the history of their micronation, and especially the everything related to Vlad the Impaler and Orthodoxy. And their redesign is actually gorgeous, and they kept the original tricolor that they had, the white, the red, and the blue, and they added this beautiful gold band on the left side, and really, really gorgeous redesign in micronation. So
Yeah,
it was not too far from the original design, and it works completely with that. And I'd say one other that does a tricolor good is Lemuria, and they do it with changing the proportions in the bands. I think it just works, and it's something that is unique that I don't think I've seen before or since in micronations. So then we start to arrive, I think, slowly to some other designs that I quite enjoy are the ones that really stand out, and some of the things that we don't see. Just before I have a special mention for my friends over at Egmont. It's classic design. I mean, blue and white, and a symbol in the on the right side in the white. It's just, I mean, it works, and the symbol that has been used in the region for so many years. I mean, how can you go wrong with that?
exactly.
um Now that's said, I think I can narrow it down to just a couple. I love Taslavia. Simple yet quite original. I don't think we've seen that many. It's a tri band, red, white, and red, with two, with another band right in the center, a little bit like what the Central African Republic is doing, but
Mhm.
with totally gorgeous popping colors. I think it works. That was a special mention. Woodlandia, who's going with four colors but in diagonal, which is not something we see quite often. They're a bit too muted for me. The colors are a bit too dark. I'm pretty sure that in grayscale or with some eye deficiencies, you may not be able to recognize the blue and the green together. But I have not made I have not made the test. So I think I can narrow it down to three. Finally, after all after all this enumeration, Christiana really stands out. It's simple, three golden circles in the red field. I mean,
There you go.
it's hard to beat. It's two colors. It's simple. It's there's nothing to be said about that. It's just gorgeous. And there's one I know we share the same. And your flag, Zar, is standing out. I mean, you also have simple colors, green, black, white, and blue. And the only critic that I would have is the Big Dipper. But apart because that would be difficult to draw as a child, but the rest of it is it works and it's totally out there. I mean, it will be a while before somebody replicates your flag. And the other one is one that we share is the Archduchy of Mimas,
Mm.
which is it's taking a simple idea, but the circle with the reverse colors in the middle and the really simple red symbol in the center that is really easily drawable. It's a tower with a crown at the bottom. For me, that does it's really gorgeous design.
I couldn't agree more. I actually have the flag of Mimas right here. And what I also really like about it, it's Mimas. Obviously, it's supposed to be the moon, one of the moons of Saturn, and I love how that
Hmm.
shape around the castle actually looks like a moon
Yeah.
or a celestial body. And it's so like it's stripes, whenever
Oh
you
yeah,
think of
yeah,
flag
exactly.
design, you think of stripes, but it does so much with the stripes, and like they could have chosen to simply go with a white circle here, and I wouldn't have been
Definitely.
mad at
Yeah.
them. But the fact that they went with this alternating line here makes this flag so utterly beautiful, and it was so amazing seeing this flag fly in Mimas when I visited this summer. Um, so yeah, really lovely and beautiful flag.
Yeah.
Another flag I really quite enjoyed because unfortunately the state no longer exists was the flag of Hutt River. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it made one mistake in my opinion. That mistake being that it broke the rule of tincture by having a white border yellow, but it still looked so great. And you knew what kind of country it was, based on agriculture, with the head of the cow or um,
Hmm.
whatever animal that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And simple, three simple colors. The circle, very iconic, and it's such a shame to see them
Oh
go,
yeah.
especially since we lost that flag.
Hmm.
Um, of course, I was going to name a historic flag.
Yeah.
There's the
But
historian I am.
the thing with Utriver, though, it's a bit complicated in the design in the middle. I would have loved to see something more simplified. But yes, I mean
That's
it's a
true.
gorgeous
It
it's a
was a bit
gorgeous line.
complex, but I still
Yeah.
I still really quite enjoyed it. And then, of course, this has been my favorite flag for some time really, since I got into micronationalism. The flag of the Grand Duchy of West Arctica. Uh, it's just so simple and yet also iconic. I mean, you might say, oh well, it looks like the flag of the it looks like the flag of the, what was it, the Shetland Islands or the Orkney Islands? I think the
Oh
Shetland
yeah,
Islands.
yeah.
The
There's
Shetland
one.
Islands use a very similar flag, but it's still distinct because of the crown. The
Yeah.
crown makes all the difference, and you see these little lines in between the main bar, the main cross, and the outer blue that's still
Hmm.
distinctive further. And this is, and it's obviously West Arctica is an Antarctic micronation, and the Nordic cross really establishes that connection to the Scandinavian cross. So they're just continuing the tradition, but on the other side of the globe, where it's also cold. The only criticism of this flag would not be really the design of the flag, but specifically the image they're using here of the crown. It's also something
Yeah.
Chloe touched on, because if you look closely, the crown is a
Oh
little.
yeah, it's too complicated. It's clearly something out of a
Yeah,
clip art archive and stamped onto the flag. It makes it distinct for sure, and but I'm pretty sure that if depending on the availability of the original file, and if we project and West Arctica becoming a and with all micronations becoming fully fledged countries, I'd figured that the crown would print really badly on different types of printer. That at one point, I think most people would just try to find ways to omit printing the crown, and that defeats the whole purpose of the flag. And I think that's one of the redesigns that Liechtenstein did. I think their crown was too complicated, and then they redesigned it to be more simplified, and
Mm.
mostly because at one point the smallest details on printers they fuse together, and there's no point in them, especially like West Arctica. Of course, you will have the big flag that will be seen in the distance, but flags is a thing that when you design you should it's really difficult to design a good flag because you have to design for the really really small, because on a document you may find the flag on next to many other flags, and at a distance it will be really really small, but it also needs to be printed on a big sheet, and so it needs to also be good for big printing formats. And so it's really hard to design for both the extra small and the extra large, which flags are. And so I think the crown has some merit to be simplified, and
I mean,
because the finer details would be
and it's
lost
not really
into.
that difficult. You can
Oh, no,
easily
no, no.
find a better image of a crown online and then just replace it. I mean, there are very high resolution images of this flag. So just color in this part so the crown is gone, and then put the new crown on there and done. And I could literally do that in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Travis,
exactly.
call me if you want flag redesign.
But the one thing that I would think maybe, if you redesign West Arctica, I think I would look into maybe doing something with the snowflake, because I know that their coat of arms has a snowflake in the top of the crown.
Mm.
I think the flag was designed before the coat of arms,
Long
and
before the coat of arms,
yeah,
long
long
before
before
it.
it.
Yeah,
And
maybe
so
a good solution would be um to make a simplified crown, but also incorporate the snowflake into
exactly,
it a
yeah.
little.
Like I know that Canada has redesigned its crown with the coronation, or just a little bit before the coronation of Charles III, and they decided to incorporate the kind of a snowflake element into the
Yeah.
crown, which is stylized in the same way that the Order of Canada is kind of a snowflake stylized. So I know there are ways to do that with crowns, and Canada has done it, and of course the coat of arms of West Arctica also has done it. And I think that they use the snowflakes so much in their symbolism, and not having that on their flag to me is I
Mhm.
mean, if you are to redesign a little bit the flag of West Arctica and at least update it, I would put snowflakes on there. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
And that way, of course, West Arctica's flag would go higher in my list. The only reason was for the crown. Actually, it's the only reason I
yeah,
didn't really have West Arctica higher, because it's a part of the flag, and to me that's
that's fair. That's fair.
without it for sure
I just still
top of the list.
like it so much, and I finally have a physical flag thanks to Travis, who gave it to me at Microcon 2023 in Ypres. So
Yeah.
I'm
I think I
very
have the
satisfied.
patch of the a patch of the flag of West Arctica that we
I have a
received at
sticker.
the.
I have a sticker somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and I mean the
it's really
snowflake is
nice.
everywhere now in West Arctica. Whether it's the Order of the Snowflake, whether it's
Mm.
everything is there are snowflakes everywhere on the coat of arms and stuff like that. And I just think that for a micronation that's also been at the forefront of protecting Antarctica, and doing good for the preservation of glaciers in Antarctica, not having a snowflake on your flag is I mean it's an urgent need for West Arctica to have a snowflake on. And I'll have to see what Flandrensis comes with, because there are a micronation that that has been on the forefront of environmental protection and Antarctican protection as well. And I can't wait to see what they'll come up with, because I know that when Flandrensis started, it was not really defined that this was, um, I think it was an idea, but it was not well defined that this is where they would be going, to preserve Antarctica and preserve the environment. And now that it is, their flag should reflect that, and I hope
Mm.
that's the one of the ways that one of the ways that they go redesigning their flag. And that's the thing, and these examples show that when you create your micronation, at one point you may not have a well-defined goal, and you may not have well-defined, of course you don't have any history, and you try to have the best design that works for you and that you enjoy working with and that you think will work well. But at one point your goals change, or your goals get more refined, and maybe some far right movements take your symbols, or maybe or maybe the symbol that you took starts to date, like with West Arctica, the crown starts to date. And at one point, it's good to look back at what you achieved and say, "Oh, I'm really proud that now my micronation is doing this or that, or that are these are our values." And now is a good time to represent that on probably what people associate the most with our nation, which is probably usually the flag. When you think of France, you think of the tricolor. When you think of Francis, you think of the red, white, and black. And when you think of West Arctica, you think of the flag. You don't think of anything else. When we talk about Egg Mort, you will have the flag in mind and stuff like that. So when and so redesign it, and especially for these micronations who are doing so much good in the world, I think it would be better for them to represent the good that they are doing in their symbols, and so that we could associate not only their micronations to their flags, but also that their flag would tell what they're about.
Of course, of course. Uh, well, one of my other favorite micronation flags actually would be the flag of Saint Castine.
Oh yeah.
That one I really specifically because of the Big Dipper. I just saw that at Microcon 2019. I thought, oh, that's so nice. They also have a Big Dipper like we do, and it really works quite well with the darker tricolor behind it. So I quite enjoyed it. And yes, you said earlier about Obscurium's flag. It's quite an honor that you seem to like it that much. You said it, yes, the Big Dipper will be difficult to replicate for a child. Actually, it's also difficult to draw for me. So whenever I draw the
Yeah.
Obscurian flag, when I hand draw it, I just use little X's instead of stars because I
That's
cannot
probably how I
draw
would draw it
stars.
sometimes. Yeah. And I just think that, with the all seeing eye, was quite good as it was in. But I mean, with the Big Dipper, there are symbols and everything, and it's good that it's there. But I just think that the flag was already quite unique with having, and even just the set of stripes was already quite unique by itself.
My main
And
criticism would actually be the number of stripes. I personally think it's a bit too many. I don't know.
well, I mean, it's better than a triband for sure. And but there are other, and we could go, one day over all the Micronational Directory, which is also another website where you can find so many good and really bad
Yeah.
flags also. But they're bad to our taste, but they're not bad because micronations have ideas behind drawing their flag. And um, if we make fun of flags, it's not because it's because sometimes they break the rules. But when we look into details, some and most of them have representations. What would make really bad flags in micronations is flags that are just that way because they're that way, and without any symbolism behind them. So that's why, even if the crown of West Arctica is not the best crown that you can find on the flag, it remains a beautiful flag because there's an idea behind it, and there's a reason why the crown is
Precisely.
there. And
Precisely.
it's to differentiate it from other micronations and from other similar designs, and for it to stand out amongst all the many Nordic crosses that you can find. And that's why and you also find it in other micronations. There are a lot of micronations who go the Nordic cross way, and most of them will have a symbol because it's difficult when you
Yeah.
have a Nordic cross to be different. And West Arctica is completely aligned with that idea to have symbols added to a Nordic cross.
Mm. Lastly, I would like to add one honorable mention, a flag which really breaks a lot of rules. It's very similar to an already existing flag. It doesn't follow the rule of tincture and heraldry, that is, don't put color on color and metal on metal. It's the flag of the Arakan Empire, which, of
Oh,
course, very similar to the Canadian flag, and then a yellow smiley on a white field. Usually, I wouldn't go for that, but you look at that flag and it's so positive. do to the
Yeah.
smiley, and you just gotta love it. You can't say no to it. You just cannot say no to it, in my opinion, at
And
least.
what's really interesting is that there are so many variations of it because once
Yeah.
again, they don't specify what type of colors or shade, and so you will find some with gradients in the red,
Mm.
some 3D shapes, some elongated shapes, some shapes that are off center. Because yeah, and Erica, the Erican Empire is actually all about that, to be
Yeah.
silly, and so it
Exactly. Exactly.
works completely with not only not only with the idea that anybody could replicate it at home, but also with the idea of the nation that anyone can do it by themselves, and it's not just one man's project. And I really like that. And there would have been so many other flags to go through, because a lot of them are simple, and some of them are, maybe they're not not the most favorite flags that I would have, but they're good, like the Sunland, which is a quite simple flag, and it works. Um, and there are, that's what's really nice in micronations, to see that even if there are already a little bit more than 200 countries on earth, and then you have, I don't know how many subdivisions which have flags in the world, because not every countries have subdivisions which have flags, but there's at least 50 US states. There are provinces in many places which have flags, and especially in Europe, each French regions have flags, in Germany and stuff like that.
Right.
And to have this amount of flags already existing, that micronations still today, with the thousands of micronations that you can find in the world, that some micronations still find ways to be unique and to have flags which are totally different. I look at the flag of Econia, and I've not seen something
Mm.
quite like it, or Lawrenceburg, which is also a crown on the
Ah,
flag
that
with
one is nice too.
stylized with the small dot in the bottom, which makes
I,
it so different. And it makes like an exclamation mark, which is, when you look at symbolisms in flags, it's so interesting, and you have so many of them, and you have so much imagination in there. You have flags which break some rules, like Elevatia, which has this purple and orange, big contrasting colors with two hexagons inside. I mean, flags are out there in micronations, and to have that diversity, even with the amount of flags existing in the world, to me, that's just showcasing the incredible creativity there is in the community.
Exactly, exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. And we named some flags here. We named our favorite flags, but don't be sad or mad if we forgot your flag. There are so many micronations out there. I definitely don't know all of them, and know all of their flags. If you
Mhm.
want your flag to be known by other micronationalists, contact me. I run the Micronational Flag Archive, which was already mentioned by Chloe. And if your flag is put into there, it might be mentioned in little projects like these, and it might gain more fame and and such. So that's the best way to get your micronation out there. Or the best way to get your micronational flag out there, and a good way to get your micronation out there. And of course, also the
Yeah,
Micronational
yeah.
Directory as a more easy way to add your micronation to a good overview and list. And yeah, I
Because
think that's.
with the directories is you will be able to have the gallery of
Mm,
all the flags of micronation in
yeah.
one place. So you can at least, and these places are good places to go, especially if you're designing a flag. Of course, go there to make sure that no one, or at least trying to find no one that has a flag too similar to yours. But because it's really difficult to know if there are no flags similar to yours. And I was quite surprised when I designed. When I mean, it was not the most complicated design in history, but when I came up with the quartered red and white flag, that, to my knowledge, and still today, I haven't found any really notable project which had the exact same combination.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
maybe I'm wrong, but and still to this day, I've not seen that pop up somewhere in history books, that there was this big micronation that had this. And because that could happen, and that would be a
I mean,
good
that
reason
the, the,
to
the thing with
change your flag.
the thing with quartered flags is usually they have some other stuff on them. Whenever a
Exactly.
flag or a banner is quartered, usually it's quartered because there are four different symbols. And
Hmm.
whenever they make a quartered flag with the specific intention of it being a flag, like in Panama's case, usually there's
Oh yeah,
something in the symbols, and Sancratosia
exactly,
really profits from that because there's nothing on there except for the colors, and it
exactly.
makes it beautifully simple and unique. And I don't think I've said that yet, but I really like your flag too. And I
Oh,
really
thank
like
you.
the theme you were going for, which is kind of similar to how Monaco organizes their
Oh
flag.
yeah,
You've got the simple national flag. You've got the state princely flag with the coat of arms on it. Then you've got the one
yeah,
of the monogram, which is the personal standard. And lastly, you've got the banner of arms. And
yeah.
Sancratosia replicated that quite well without uh, like stealing from Monaco. Right? You could have just taken the literal symbols of Monaco and like changed the color, instead of a red and white checkered field, you could have made it a green
Oh
and
yeah,
white checkered
totally.
field. But you chose to go for something that is similar if you know what they look like, but
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
still distinct. I look at this and I see, yeah, that's Sancratosia. That has nothing to do with Monaco, but I also see it got inspired by it,
It's
and
it's it's the
that's
be
amazing.
distinctive or related, and in the case of Sancratosia, we are just distinct enough. And of course, I could have gone with the lozenge, and that would have been outright
Yeah,
the same route as Monaco, and it's an homage to Monaco. It's really not because we want to steal from Monaco. We really think that if Monaco can succeed, most micronations could
exactly.
in the best case scenario, any micronation could succeed because Monaco is this small oddity in Europe that I've been actually more times to Monaco than I've been to Halifax in Canada. So I've been twice to Monaco and never to Halifax. So
Oh
that's to
man.
say, even if I go once to Halifax, I'll still have been to Monaco more times than some places in Canada. And it's just a wonderful place in this small oddity in Europe. And it's actually also from the book of Kevin Baugh, try to find things that you could always find on hand. And I was like, if no printer could print Sancratosia's flag, I could always, stitch together two
Yeah.
Monaco flags, and I would have a really elongated flag, but I would still have
And you can
a Sancratosian
and
flag.
even like taking pieces of cloth, that's a
Oh
flag you
yeah,
can very
I
easily
I
replicate.
could actually buy just a flag of Monaco, cut it in the middle, and reverse one side, and that would be the Sancratosian flag.
That's
So that
actually
was the idea. That was the idea to
well,
have
now I know how to
a
make
little
my
bit of
Sancratosia flag.
exactly, and it was a little bit that DIY side of Kevin Baugh that
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the spirit behind it, and so there you have it for the history of Sancratosia. And then of course, if I'm gonna take inspiration from Monaco, go all the way, and it gives up. I mean, they have a great identity, and so I went along with it.
And I think that's the perfect way to end this exchange by hearing some more things about Sancratosia. So, um, yeah, that's been our little flag talk, and I'm very glad once again you did this with me, and to hear
Well,
your
happy to
take on
be here.
flags.
Yes, it's been wonderful, and with Flagman, it was not. It was an honor actually. So
The honor was all mine, my friend. And yeah, thank you. Thanks to everyone who stuck with us through the first video and the second one too. It's been a bit long, but we talked a lot about a lot of detailed things, and I hope you did enjoy it, and you did enjoy it, and you learned a couple of new things too, as I'm sure both of us did. And keep an open mind. Don't judge immediately. Design your flags well, and just be an awesome person and or micronationalist. And yeah, I think those are the main things you can take out of this.
never be afraid to change if change is needed. That's also one important thing.
Exactly, exactly. So once again, I've been Zar Antonov, president of the United Republic of Obscurium, and goodbye.